Hi, I'm Inka and this is episode 2 of my Write a Book with Me series, in which I share with you each step on my journey of writing and publishing the high fantasy modern military horror MSV Shelter. In the first video I separated the book into aspects and brainstormed ideas for each of them, and in this video we'll go in depth on 2 of these aspects, characters and relationships. The goal is to have the following things at the end of the video. First, a chapter outline for the romance arc. Second, a list of characters. Third, a filled out character sheet for the main cast. Fourth, a thematic opposition graphic for the main cast. Fifth, a filled out relationship sheet for the main relationships. And sixth, the first scene in which I'm introducing the cast, or most of the cast at least. That's a tall order, so let's get to it. Even though my story is a high fantasy military horror, the heart of it is a romance. And the romance is what all the other plots and subplots will kind of twist around. Usually I start plotting by picking one or several outlining tools like Save the Cat, Dan Harmon's Story Circle, Romancing the Beat, or KM Weiland's Structuring Your Novel, and cobble them all together into something that I can use. But this time I didn't use any of them. What I did instead was take the romance story I laid out in the last video, where I just picked out everything I loved about the ghost soap fanfiction and TikToks and mushed them all together and separated them into chapters. I started doing that in Scrivener and fell in love with the index card approach. I just love how it looks and how manageable it is. I wrote down everything I wanted to happen in a chapter, then I chose a POV that would best suit the story and shuffled them around. And then I migrated all of it over to Notion because Notion's just better in every aspect. And prettier. The chapter index cards are still very bare bones by now. I have this chapter table on Notion where I collect all the chapter breakdowns for every plot thread, and once I caught them all, I'm going to combine them into a more in-depth chapter outline. And after I finished the romance chapter outline, I saw that I pretty much followed the major plot beats of every plotting template anyway, because that's just what usually happens. Having a list of characters isn't just amazing for reference, but it also gives you a comprehensive look at the types of characters that you filled your world with. I don't remember in which episode of the Writing Excuses podcast they talked about this. I'm going to find that out and put the link into the description, hopefully. But they talk about creating an Excel sheet with like different columns like gender, race, age, disabilities, body shapes, etc. to see if the cast might be too skewed towards one particular type of character. Maybe they're all white, or in my case, they're all male. I do write lesbian stories as well, and in those the cast is mostly female. I guess I just don't like to cross the streams. I did turn one of the characters into a woman. The Undercity King became the Undercity Queen. This fits much better with my world of Gua, where all the major players, the gods, the rulers, they are all women. And it puts her into contrast with Cheek's mother, because she is overbearing while Cheek's mother is negligent. And mommy issues are also a huge theme in Gua. No idea where that comes from. In the end, these are the tags that are interesting to me. First off, the actor that I'm basing the character on, to have an easier time picturing them. Second, the character category, if they are a major, side or minor character. Third, the motherdom, which country they come from. Fourth, the race, the fantasy race, not our real world races, as far as they actually exist. Fifth, the temperaments, because I want to keep them as working cogs in a machine. They need to work well together. I'm always reminded of this picture with these guys in one car. I want them to have chemistry and ping pong off each other in a group setting, which is, I think, very important, especially in military fiction. Sixth, the allegiance, because we have a few groups in this story with differing motivations. And this is great to make sure that I have enough representatives for each. Seventh, a call sign. This is just for easy referencing. This exercise was a lot of fun, and it made for a much more colorful cast. I added an Asian coded character, I added another race that I rarely get to use, the Douce because they're just overpowered. But they're only powered when the sun's out, so they're pretty useless in this story. And I added a Bergman, which actually helped me fill out a plot hole that had been gnawing at the back of my head. I hate character sheets. In my experience, they are just a loose collection of never-ending questions which are mind-grindingly boring to fill out and extinguish all love you once held for your character. I tried to create my own character sheet, but it still ended up just a loose collection of never-ending questions. And then I found the local script man. He made a character sheet that opened my eyes and made me incredibly mad of not having come up with it myself. A link to his video is in the description, but I'm going to try to summarize it here. The idea behind his template is to streamline the character. He also has another video in which he talks about how every characteristic of your character needs to connect into a cohesive image, which drastically changes them from how real people work. And that is what he does here. He starts with a negative experience, which creates a core belief about himself or the world. Both are mostly unconscious, and the core belief oftentimes sounds stupid if you say it out loud, so the character derives from it a stated belief, which they tell themselves and others, and this stated belief influences every aspect of their lives. I created my own version of this in Notion, so let's go through that as quickly as possible. Before I start though, for those who've seen the last video, Necro has changed quite a lot. He's still intimidating, like Ghost from Call of Duty, and has this type of infamy. He looks like the same archetype, but personality-wise, he's much closer to the main character of First Interaction by Duncan Falconer, or Arby from Utopia, the British version, you heathens.
Where is Jessica Hyde?
First off, we have the general data of the character on the right, with the full name, age, height, race, motherdom, occupation, and other things you might want to add. Necro's full name is Captain Latif Ra. He is 2 meters and 5 centimeters tall and 41 years old. He's tall and slender with broad shoulders. He was born in brickworks but has Rason ancestry. Then we have the description on the top left. A character's appearance is oftentimes the first thing we know about a character and paves the way we think about them. The description doesn't have to focus on the physical appearance though. How the character comes across to the narrator is oftentimes much more important. Necro is a tall and lumbering man, all clad in black. He is always geared up with helmet, backpack and a heavy vest and jacket, which leaves no inch of skin uncovered. 6 pairs of teal lenses click and wear around his head, with 2 of them covering his eyes at all times. Right underneath descriptions we have descriptors. I've got this idea from the video Harry Potter, How a Turf Writes Mystery by Just Right. Again, the link is in the description. It's about repeating details or certain words for a character as a shorthand and to remind the reader of the first image you painted of them. For Necro we have clicking, wearing and lumbering. I just like the contrast of his brute persona and his fragile technology. After that, on the left we have the background. I'm not happy with that name, but I haven't found a better one yet, so I'll just have to stick with this one. I've tried to retain the linearity of the local scriptman's character sheet. Again, in the beginning there was trauma. How I define trauma in the context of a story is that a character goes into a situation with a fundamental need and the expectation of that need to be fulfilled, and then they get their expectations utterly destroyed. Then I split the core belief into a core worldview and a core self-image, and I added a suppressed need and emotion. I added emotion because this is a cosmic horror story. It's about people going insane. That's one of the major tropes, and I wondered what insane might look like in my story. I think it's the side of them, the emotion that they are desperately trying to suppress, that is welling up and surprises everybody around them and themselves and fucks up their entire life. All of this is shaped into a stated worldview and a stated self-image, and then I also added an unhealthy MO. Writing is a visual art form. We can look into a character's head, but their change is measured by their actions. Maybe just a single action, but oftentimes it's a cluster of actions that they repeat ad nauseum and which reaffirm their beliefs and keeps them in that loop. When they are thrust into action, it's this unhealthy MO that is targeted, and by trying to deal with it, we also indirectly deal with all the underlying issues. At the end of the story, the character shows off a whole new MO, a healthier one, in a positive character arc or an unhealthier one in a negative character arc. Let's go through all of this with Necro as an example. Necro's trauma is that when he was still in the Navy, Necro threw himself in front of his then boyfriend to shield him from an explosion which nearly took his life and burned him badly. During recuperations, he suffered nightmares and wanted his boyfriend's support, but the man seemed distant after the incident, showering him with gifts but never staying long, and always putting off doing anything physical with Necro, under the excuse of not wanting to irritate the wounds. One night, after a particularly bad nightmare and scared out of his mind, Necro staggered out of his hospital room to find his boyfriend, only to find him in bed with somebody else. His core worldview is that if he's not in total control, things go to shit because everyone around him is a coward who'll run at the first chance. His core self-image is that he's not worth committing to. If he wants people to stay, he'll have to force them. The need he tries to suppress is for support. He wants to avoid being seen as needy and asking for help. The emotion that he's trying to suppress is fear, because that's what pushed him out of that hospital room that day. Every time he's scared, which happens a lot, he's a warrior, he immediately turns that anger into adrenaline. How he reacts to this event seems somewhat off. And that's because this trauma is just the last of many similar ones. He also grew up with unhelpful parents, neglectful parents, where he had to grow up quickly to survive, and where he would just get chewed out for showing weakness, not being man enough. I just didn't want to add that because it's kind of implied, and this section is already big enough as it is. His stated worldview is that being brave means committing to the fullest. His stated self-image is that he's the only one who's been through so much shit that he's burned out any cowardice inside of him. His unhealthy MO is that when he's scared, he turns the fear into anger and lets it out on the people around him in form of cold rage and overbearing abusive behavior. Another term I'm not all that happy with, I put this into the middle because it's not just influenced by the backstory but by the data as well. The same person with the same backstory might have different areas to show depending on if they are young or not, from which country they are, or race, or which job they have. I must admit I went a little bit overboard with this one, but it's not like I have to fill out each of them for every character. This template is meant for major and side characters, but not every side character is going to get the full treatment, or we'd be here all year. Oh wait, let's rattle them off real quick. First off, goals. The local script man had a great rant about how we overemphasize goals in storytelling because they really are just arbitrary things that can change on a dime. Necro has 3 goals. First off, find and kill Squadron B and the scientist. Second, save the Reapers from becoming cowards. And third, find out what's so fishy about this mission. Second, his desire, which is to connect with people. Third is his fear of being backstabbed. I love fear and desire because they instantly build internal conflict like Abby Emmons always loves to talk about, and they hint at the core worldview and image. Especially the fear is oftentimes more primal and gives you a glimpse into the deeper machinations of the character. Fourth, the vibe. This is kind of the archetype you want to capture. Necro is that hillbilly guy that you feel intellectually superior to, but you do not want to cross him because you know he'll hurt you. Fifth, the voice. Very important and incredibly hard for me to write. For this one, I try to find a person I can model the speech after. For Necro, this first was Duncan Falcona narrating first into action, and now that's mixed with Arby from Utopia.
Where is Jessica Hyde?
6, roles. This, just like fear and desire, can give you instant internal and external conflicts.
I am black, I am a Muslim, and I am a man. And sometimes those 3 things, they war with each other.
Go watch Oz, it's a good show. Necro's roles are Captain, Drill Sergeant and Special Forces Operator. 7th, reputation. This was the gut punch moment for me in the autobiography First into Action by Duncan Falcona. Almost at the very end you get a side character saying something about Duncan, which shows how everyone sees Duncan and which clashes wildly with what Duncan and the reader by extension think or thought of him. It made me go back over the story in my mind and see it in a different light. This is great for generating conflict between characters and as a character twist. Similar to that character, Necro too is seen as a heartless bastard and the boogeyman of the special forces. 8th, relationships. This is how they act in relationships and can be seen as an extension to the unhealthy MO. Necro wants to be close to people but has to keep in constant control over them and his environment. 9th, presentation. He's always the scariest motherfucker in the room without even having to try. He knows it because he's heard many people say as much when he wasn't trying to be. Nowadays he plays more into his reputation. 10th, politics. Necro doesn't care about politics. He used to be much more progressive in his youth, but now he swerves closer to the conservative side. 11th, lifestyle. Necro stays mostly by himself and only interacts with the world by spying on them through a scope or his mechanical spider spies. 12th, sexuality. He knew that he was gay since his teenage years and was out and proud early on. He's always been super monogamous, hating one-night stands, and always yearned for a lover he can fully trust. 13th, admirable traits. He's very self-sacrificing and brave to a fault. When he commits fully. 14th, his fatal flaw is that he's paranoid and trusts nobody to do their job right or stay loyal to him. 15th, manipulation. I have this one from the Abby Emmons character sheet. It's about how the character tries to get what they want. Necro mostly uses intimidation and guilt-tripping. 16th, values. For him, loyalty and bravery stand above anything else. 17th, quirks. Habits and addictions. What do they do to cope? It can be a fun little quirk or it can be life-destroying addiction. But try to make it specific to add character. Quirks are oftentimes the calling card for a character. What makes them memeable or sellable, if you want to be crass about it. Necro spies on others to fill up his social meter and calm himself. He keeps switching through VAs when he's nervous and he gets super pushy during high-tension situations. He gets angry, unreasonable, and bodily drags people to where he needs them to be. 18th. His likes are having people close while not having to interact with them. He likes drinking tea because he's super British. He loves good teamwork even when he undercuts it at every corner. And he loves hand-to-hand combat, especially grappling because it gives him an excuse to get close to people while showing off how awesome he is and being in complete control. 19th. His dislikes are people who are being too nice because he doesn't trust them. He doesn't like being put into the spotlight. He hates coffee because it's a horrible foreign import. And people who don't care about morality or the job because he can't control them. 20th. His skills and hobbies are diving, sniping, playing with new technology, staying still, being physically uncomfortable, and teaching younger soldiers. Now below this we have the character arc. Here I just try to summarize the arc as quickly as possible to get a bird's eye view and see if it makes sense and, more importantly, if it evokes emotion. Writing some of these I actually got a bit teary-eyed and I rewrote a lot of them to get at least a bit of that gut punch feeling I want the reader to have at the end of the arc. Necro is the captain of the Reapers and tasked with finding and killing Squadron B. He's the boogeyman of the Special Forces who's always on his own, and when he's not, he takes the air out of the room, creeping everybody out. He's overbearing because he cares. He needs to save them from their own disloyalty and cowardice. When Cheek arrives, Necro is forced to deal with the subordinate who neither fears nor adheres to his view of cowardice. Cheek isn't ready to commit to anyone, but gives his heart and time and body easily and without fear. This rattles Necro as he realizes that he might be brave on the battlefield, but scared when it comes to people. To maintain his self-image of being the bravest man around, he intends to mingle and get more social. For that, though, he needs to learn new social skills, because there is no way that anybody would like him for who he truly is. His plan seems to work as he starts becoming friends with the other soldiers of his troop and gets even closer to Cheek, whom he shows his scarred up face to and whom he tells about his ex-boyfriend. Finally, he knows what true support feels like. He starts to fall in love with Cheek, and with his new mindset of bravery, he goes to ask Cheek out only to find out that the oddity is already sleeping with half of the troop. Hurt and feeling betrayed, Necro returns to his isolation and voyeurism. After having lived through this other, better life though, it's impossible to get comfortable in his old one again. His friends try to make him see Cheek's point of view and that he never wanted to hurt Necro, and while Necro might understand that on a logical level, he can't turn off the emotions that are starting to burst out of him. He can't stop thinking about the betrayal of his ex-boyfriend and all those times someone wasn't there to support him. All the fear that he's tried to suppress his whole life wells up and kind of makes him freeze up. Along with it also comes the hurt and anger, and all of it builds to the revelation that he secretly thinks he's never been good enough for anybody to stay with him. Not his ex-boyfriend, not his mom or dad. There's nothing in him worth staying for. His subordinates would be better off with another captain, like Fleischer. Only then Fleischer, of course, turns out to be a traitor. Necro stands his ground against him, waiting for his subordinates to betray him and join Fleischer, but they don't. They all have his back, and even one of Fleischer's operators joins their side when they flee. He realizes that he does have something these people want, and that is his loyalty and integrity. They put their trust in him, and now he must trust them back and takes off his mask for them. His leadership becomes more egalitarian, and he leaves the micromanaging behind him. He moves forwards, putting his trust in Cheek again and apologizing for how he treated him, and admits that Cheek was right and he had been a coward. At the climactic moment where he must trust Cheek to not kill him to save himself, he decides to not even give Cheek and the situation another glance, trusting in Cheek to find a way and choose Necro, because Necro now knows that committing to him is the best choice anybody can make for themselves. We finish the story with him being a part of the troupe, relaxed and supported as he plans their future together. Then we have the links to the relationships the character is involved in. We will take a closer look at that in the following chapter. And at the very end we have notes, just random stuff that I didn't know where else to put and to keep track of during drafting and editing. I filled out the template for the main 4 characters and wanted to do the same for some side characters as well, but I found myself struggling to fill them out because I haven't thought of them as much yet, and I didn't want to just add anything. I wanted them all to not just be plot relevant, but thematically relevant as well, and that's when I reached back for the help of the 4-corner opposition, which I'm calling the thematic opposition. John Truby talks about the 4-corner opposition in his book Anatomy of Story. It's about showing how the characters are positioned regarding theme. We have the theme commitment versus freedom. On the left we have the commitment-oriented characters, and on the right we have the freedom-oriented characters. What I used to determine their position was their core worldview. At the top of the chart we have the good sides and representations of said position, and on the bottom the bad ones. That's why I don't like this model. In this case I just equaled good to how in tune they are with themselves. I just don't like to think in good or bad in general, neither in life nor story. Just find your own way of contrasting character position regarding theme. As you can see, I created a position for the beginning of the book and where they are supposed to end up afterwards. Through this exercise I realized that there would be major conflict between Cheek and Poet. I wanted them to have a big bromance, but it felt flat until now. Now I have this big issue between them, and I think that will make the eventual bromance all the richer and interesting. It also allows Groan to really shine in his peacekeeper role, and it gives me one less person that I need to keep away from Cheek in chapter 8 to isolate him, and I could even use Poet to isolate him further and break him down further. The relationship template is thankfully much shorter. I'm just going to throw you into this because I don't have any major resources. For this chapter I chose Necro's friendship with Groan just to change it up a bit. First we have the trope. This is just about what relationship dynamic this is supposed to be. For Necro and Groan, this is a friendship between 2 big guys. They're both the tall, brooding type who you'd expect to be comparing dick sizes, but who get along weirdly well and just like to sit with each other in silence. Second, we have description. This is a short summary of how their relationship develops. Groan is Necro's second in command. They are awkward around each other, with both wanting to become friends but not knowing how to get there. Groan tries to reach out, but Necro lets him down. Only after Necro wants to get closer to Cheek does he join Groan and the others during their free time. Now they slowly start to gravitate towards each other. They've known a lot about each other, but now they can make use of their knowledge, with Groan telling Necro that he's behaving like an asshole with Cheek. They both love Cheek but don't hate the other for being involved with him, and are more worried about each other getting their heart broken or not making the best of it. They start to rely on each other as Groan takes up more responsibilities and Necro starts to trust him. Then we have halves and barbs. These are two concepts that you stumble over when you research how to write relationships. The halves are from an old Greek myth in which humans used to have two pairs of arms and legs and two heads until Zeus split them apart, and now they wander the earth searching for their missing half or their soulmate. I hate this concept because it plays into the lie of the one true love in Western culture. But it does touch on something that I think is very important in every relationship. And that is that they fulfill a need in you. Just ask what the character needs and how the other can fulfill the need, and you have your two halves. Even though I chose the term myself, I don't much like it because it implies two people who can fulfill each other's needs completely, when I actually believe it takes a whole network of people to do so. Just find something that each of them is missing and that the other can provide. And make sure the reader knows what that is as well, so they can root for the relationship to work and feel the loss of potential when it doesn't. Necro needs someone to kick him in the ass when it comes to emotional bravery, and someone he can talk through his problems with. Someone who challenges him mentally but isn't as high energy as Cheek. Groan needs someone to kick him in the ass in a more practical sense, to start fighting for things and set a higher standard for himself. Someone he can look up to and emulate. And then we have the barbs. I took this term from the concept braiding roses. I don't know where it comes from, but the idea is you have two or more characters who could be good for each other, but every time they get close, they prick each other with their barbs. A characteristic or value, just something that keeps them apart. During the story, they find ways to wrap around each other, so the barbs are perfectly aligned and they fit without pricking each other again. For this, you must answer the question of what are the fundamental flaws of each of them that keep them apart. They are both low energy and introverted and not used to taking the first step. Groan also doesn't want to speak out and tell Necro his opinion because that would mean more work for him. And Necro, he isn't ready to start a friendship with Groan because that would also mean more work and a loss of energy for work and for keeping everybody alive. They have incredibly hard shells, which they retreat to quickly at the first sign of trouble. So we've got the halves, what they need or want from each other, and we've got the barbs, what is keeping them apart. And then I found a third thing, the rolling obstacles, which I found by watching one of Jane Calm's videos. It's linked in the description below. Calms talks about how you need smaller obstacles to keep them apart, because if you keep harking on the same one for the whole book, the readers will get frustrated with the characters, or even worse, bored. You need to keep setting up new conflicts to keep the relationship development interesting. This, though, can often lead to the idiot plot, which just means you're making up conflicts just because you think you need one now, and turn these conflicts into something thematically vapid and which could be easily solved if the characters would just talk to each other. So I'm going to apply the local script guy's philosophy on stringing everything together. I want one big barb, one major conflict that lies at the heart of what keeps them apart, and all the little conflicts that roll into each other are just symptoms of that bigger conflict. Why do you never take out the trash? Why can you never be on time? You lied to me. All of these are small conflicts, and by solving them, you start nibbling away at that greater conflict as well, which then gets unveiled during the aha moment late in the story. And now that they have all these tools which they have acquired during fighting the other obstacles, they can solve that bigger obstacle and get everything in order during Act 3 to fit seamlessly together. Necro doesn't think a friendship would be worth the loss of energy. Groan is angry at Necro for not giving Cheek what he himself would like to give him. He secretly lives through Necro. The rolling obstacles is a list that I'm just going to keep track of and won't figure out completely now. Then we have change. This is how they change each other or are changed by each other by the end. Necro becomes much more self-aware and is more at peace with himself. He's worked through some of his issues and can trust his second in command, as well as share his lover with someone. Groan is much more active in his life and work, taking on more responsibility and fighting for who he loves and what he values. He's ready to fall for Cheek and try to become a better partner, just like he's becoming a better second in command. And again, a link to the chapter breakdown of their relationship if I have it. Besides the main character's relationship, I haven't created a chapter breakdown for anybody else, so I don't know how feasible that is. I like structure, I like concepts. What I truly struggle with is putting all of that into practice. I'm especially bad with character voice, so I decided to take the characters I built this month with bullet points and ideas and put them into practice, to create a small prototype for them, if you will. And I wanted to do that by writing the first scene of the book, in which I introduce most of the main cast, minus Cheek. I already have most of my scenes sketched out because the way I'm going through these pillars that I talked about in the last video is not linear at all. But these videos do help me categorize and deepen aspects of the story and force me to do things that I do not want to do. So I do know by now how the story starts and what the first scene will look like, roughly. To get a better idea of it, I'm going to flesh it out with a scene card. First, we have the idea behind the scenes. Which characters will be present, where it is set, and what will happen. The first scene is about the submarine arriving at the RV and the soldiers getting ready to meet up with their new co-worker, the Oddity. Abby Emmons talks about how important emotional arcs are in a scene. The link to the video again can be found in the sources below. The character starts out in one emotional state because they have expectations for how the scene is going to go, but then obstacles get in the way. They try to hold on to their belief, but it gets crushed. Necro starts out believing that this is the perfect setup to have a team at his back, feel supported by them and connect with people. But the minute we meet anybody, we see how incapable he is of connecting with people and how scared everybody is of him. And at the end of the scene, they're too scared to have his back and he's left alone once again. He goes from giddy to defeated. The unity of effect or impression is a point of the greatest importance. Edgar Allan Poe. I actually heard this quote on the Writing Excuses podcast though. It's about editing your story or directing it to focus on one emotion you want to invoke in the reader. And I think with the first scene, which is mainly about introducing Necro, the main effect I want to have is to inject the reader with a mixture of disgust and empathy for Necro. Let's see how that works out. Then on the left we have the beats of the scene. This is where I brainstorm the concrete details of what is about to happen. Development. In this section I write down everything I need to establish in this scene and how the scene fits into the bigger story. In the first scene I'm focusing on introducing all the characters and major relationships, as well as the first domino of the story getting knocked over. Kay Weiland in her book about creating characters talks about the characteristic moment at the beginning and end of every story to compare how the character has changed. She has multiple bullet points that need to be checked off during the characteristic moment, but I'm only going to focus on establishing his unhealthy MO, describe his appearance and his main strength and fatal flaw. After that I have space for notes, text and ideas. The original idea was to write the story in close third person, but something just felt off to me the entire time. I just didn't like it, so I rewrote it to be first person. I like the little kick that first person has at the start of the story. First we think it's a third person and only then the first person narrator is introduced. It puts us into the mindset of a voyeur. Most of his life is shaped by watching other people and living through them, and I hope that's the effect I'm kind of having. I'd like to say that I didn't put a lot of work into this and this is just the first draft, so please don't drown me in criticism, but that would be a lie. I rewrote this at least 4 times. The first one was just to get into the story and it was far too long, just filled with a lot of exposition dumping. In the second round I cut out around 1,000 words and tightened things up. In the third round I rewrote it to be in first person, and in the fourth round I rewrote it trying to find and stay in Necro's voice more or less successfully. So yes, I had a very hard time with this, which I hadn't expected, but I also haven't written a scene since NaNoWriMo. So I think I'm just a bit rusty. And on the right we have space for the full scene, which will now be read to you by me. I've tried, I went on Fiverr and tried to find someone professional to do this, but I only contacted them at the beginning of the last week of uploading this video. So you have to make do with me. I'm sorry, I can't do accents for shit. I can barely speak English. But yeah, I still hope you will enjoy scene 1. 7th of Ara Simanu, 3450 GG, 120 kilometers off Babel Harbor, 0600 local time. The MSV Shelter tips up its nose. The comforting clatter of breakfast in the mess hall is spoiled by the sudden lean, and the smileys, they are not used to submarines and all that comes with them. They make shocked noises. Jimmy Boy spills his tray of food onto Miles' back. He doesn't apologize, and his body doesn't say a word, but his lips thin, and his dark crocodile skin tightens. When Jimmy tries to pick the strands of spaghetti off the soft pyjama cotton, Miles pushes his hand away. At a 40-degree lean, they keep walking past the submariners and reapers, up to the other smileys. Whose genius idea was it to emerge during breakfast then? Miles presses out like he's trying to keep things right between them. 50 bricks on necro, the creepy git. Fucking hell, Jimmy, Miles hisses. His slitted eyes hush up the beige walls, like he's searching for something. One of the spies, probably. But he doesn't find it. The little mechanical spider is right above their booth, its white shell camouflaged on the light ceiling. All its eyes and ears are on the pair as it sends audio and visual down the corridor, to the rows of suits. There, in a cozy 2x2 suit with a nice bed, it has checkered sheets and a soft mattress, and isn't too small, a sink with a little scratched mirror above it, and a chair and table. I sit cocooned behind my desk. I'm in full gear already, black from head to toe, with my backpack softening the ache in my spine. My visual aids, 3 semi-attached quad goggles, click and wear around my head. I pushed on the mask to eat, but I'm too focused on Mael and Jimmy. Their arms and thighs pressed together in the tight space, and I miss my mouth with the fork. A low giggle escapes as I wipe the food away. I've made quite the mess already and decide the peripheral vision the goggles allow aren't enough. I switch and match the VAs until I see the food before me with one eye, while the other is still trained on the soldiers. Each wanker sadder than the next. I shrug and slurp down the strand of pasta. They're not the one who are going to have my 6 at today's RV. 10 more minutes until we reach the surface. I switch to the camera in the wardroom. There the spider's positioned right above Groan's bald head, with his pale lilac skin and the red and angry-looking hypertrophic scars that stretch all of his body. He fills out half the view with his mass. He fills out half the view with his mass. Poet and Pill look like sticks beside him. He finishes his food and groans as he stares at the empty tray. Grossy's confident voice travels from across the room by the entrance. The smiley OCs have taken the good spot right away and no one's fought them on it. Grossy is telling one of his tales. He takes up space, arms wide. His sleeves are rolled up and his patchwork metal skin, all dented and welded unevenly, catch the dim ceiling light. His fellow lieutenant Teeth just nods from time to time. He looks bored. The submariners on rotation are squashed between the special forces guys. They make themselves as small as possible against the wall. Are you still eating that? Groan's thick Haitian accent rings over the table as he looks at Pill. Don't be giving me those googly eyes, you're not getting any. I need all the calories I can get. I look at my watch and get tomato sauce all over my sleeve. Around 4 minutes until we reach the surface at the RV point. I get up and my bones groan with the walls. Hunched over, I step into the dim corridor. There I'm hugged by the smell of men I know and the citrus of air fresheners. The submariners hang them everywhere like New Day's decorations. Poet pushes the tray he's been poking with his fork towards Groan and massages his skull through the short-cropped afro. Here, you can have mine. My stomach's been grumbling up a storm today and I can just see myself up on deck. Bloody explosive diarrhea in my pants, flooding down my leg. It's going to be real chunky too with all them veggies in it. Fucking hell, Poe, I'm trying to eat here. Grunt laughs with a full mouth. Not into scut? Should be nutritious enough with all these healthy things they feed us. Get some more calories in you for your bulk. Grown pops a cherry into his mouth and skewers it with his razor-sharp teeth as he finishes the last of Pote's portion. Pill makes a disgusted face. Of course you'd say that, bloody cannibal. His spoon clatters onto the plastic table and he pushes his tray away. Grown snatches it up and digs in. I need to stay crouched so the fine mechanics of my VAs don't get smashed against the tubes on the low-hanging ceiling. Everyone I meet flattens themselves into the nearest crook they can find or flee back into a room. Some look tired after a shift finally done, others with mussed hair and in PJs straight out of bed or coming out of the shower half naked. You both suck, unsupportive until the end. Love you, Grown says between mouthfuls. You don't need more muscle. I think twink suits you better than bear. The wardroom smells like it did back at my auntie's, with all the flower-stitched pillows and throw blankets. It's warm. I duck through the doorway and the wardroom goes quiet. I lumber towards the Reapers and nod at Grown's stack of trays. What portion's that then? Before he gets a chance to lie, the spider from above them skitters down the wall and onto Grown's shoulder before its tiny metal legs click off the desk's surface and crawl up the sleeve of my Nomex suit. You'll get sick again. I'm sorry, Necro. Need a hand with that? I would stick 2 fingers down his throat, the ones that are cut free from the glove to quickly find the trigger, and feel him throw up. Grown groans as he heaves himself up. Thank you, Captain. I have it covered. I wait for his arm or chest to brush my side. No way to allow us in. I don't need you imbeciles to cause an international incident, so play nice. Follow their rules and traditions, no matter how weird. The Babylonians trust us to respect their home, and we're going to honor that no matter what weird shit our new addition is going to pull. We reach the small space at the bottom of the ladder that leads to the forward escape trunk. It's surrounded by plastic sheets that Fleischer opens, and the last man in closes behind himself. It's a makeshift biohazard area. Behind the ladder, a shelf had been quickly welded between the cables and tubes at the start of the journey. Now it holds rows of spray cans and canisters of glaze. It's a protective layer that's supposed to save us from the acid in the Babylonian rain. It was created for this mission and in only a month's time. If it works, we're yet to find out. And don't forget, don't look at it. Keep focused and get glazed, every inch of you. Is that understood? A wave of copy and affirm. Fleischer hands the spray can to Grow C. I don't want to see a spot on glazed, boys. Better double than miss an inch. They split up in pairs, spraying their partners down front to back. Even Grow C. They don't know if the icing can mutate inorganic material and still don't know how inorganic Bergmen actually are. Grown steps up to me. He's my second in command, so he probably felt like he had to, with a can in hand and an unsure smile on his face. I tell the spiders to take it. They're not built for more than surveillance, but the can is light enough and they'll do a better job of it than any of the guys. Another swarm has stolen its own can from the shelf. Grown looks uncomfortable as the spiders start swarming around us, spraying us down. I look at the others. Mate, you missed a spot, I say slowly. Teeth looks up, immediately knowing that it was directed at him with how carelessly he's been spraying down Mael. His bored expression shifts and the tension returns to his leg's posture as he starts to do a passable job. Mael gives me a quick look that I can't read, probably too scared of me to be thankful. Fleischer turns to us. Let's welcome in the beast. The ladder creaks under our weight as we climb to the forward escape trunk, a large sphere 4 stories up. Fleischer's above me and he opens the operating wheel after checking in with the captain. It creaks and the submarine breathes around us before the upper hatch opens into a storm. The wind and rain hail inside and turn the ladder slippery and pearl the lenses. The noise overwhelms the microphones on the outside of my headset. It smells like a jungle, but no jungle I've ever been to. Fleischer drags himself on deck, but he slips on the wet ladder and I catch him, bodily dragging him the rest of the way. The rain hammers down. The deck of the submarine sparkles like it's part of the ocean. I turn around to haul up the others. It's freezing. Late spring in the Middle East shouldn't be this cold. And it's dark, the capital of Babylonia. The harbor is still a long ways out, but the city landscape envelops my field of view. I knew that Babel's overcity, the plate that hasn't sunken beneath the ocean yet, sprawls out for more than 800,000 square kilometers. It's the biggest city of Goa because it houses the biggest citizens of Goa. Through the storm I can make out the thick platforms rising out of the dark ocean like thousands of oil rigs, and on those plates, tall as skyscrapers, move the oddities. They're nothing but dark shadows illuminated in short bursts of lightning. Their bodies are shapeless and so tall that their heads stay hidden in clouds. My heart pumps in my chest. Don't think about it. I lie to myself about how far away they must still be, what that would say about their actual height. The ambient light of the ocean is playing tricks on me. Those giant silhouettes are just projections of far smaller creatures. Light works strangely here. The oddities move slowly but with purpose, like they're working, probably on making the city buoyant. Their Babylonian correspondent had gotten them permission to extract their squadron from the Undercity, had allowed them to destroy the layers of sunken cities that the Overcity is built on, because the framework of the Undercity is in the way for the giant columns and pontoons which they need to keep the Overcity afloat. It's a win-win and didn't smell fishy to me. Not back then. Looking at them now, it doesn't feel right. But do the oddities care about platforms and pontoons? I look at my watch, which is forming a small lake on its display in seconds. 0635. Our oddity is running late. Do immortals know time? Stop. When I look up again, one of the silhouettes has moved closer and steers through the water. It moves slowly, but the water rises in massive waves that reach the submarine long before it will. I don't look up because I know that I'd have to crane back my head and still not see its face, and because people lose their minds that way. The oddity moves like a glacier and shines with an inner light. It breaks through the oddity's liquid blue skin. Like a cold rising sun, the oddity closes in on us. It's blinding and I tint my goggles. As it comes closer, I make out the planes of its liquid skin and the too many limbs that waver in and out of my periphery. I can't breathe. My skin breaks out into goosebumps as the cold seeps into my Nomex suit and drapes over me like a wet blanket. Fleischer walks free, but instead of moving towards Poet, he keels over and starts puking. Grossi is flailing around, dragging teeth and mile towards the conning tower like an anxious sheepdog. Then he gets to Poet and knocks him out. Poet's body hits the flooded deck, the water splashes around him, and his limp body gets swept up by the waves. He is almost carried off deck, but Pil catches the back of his vest and drags him against the conning tower, where he cages him in with his body, grasping at his mate like at a lifeline. Fleischer has joined them at the tower. His eyes are wide, but carefully stick to the deck. I'm left alone at the front. And that's it. A script under 5,000 words. I am so proud of myself. It was a busy month and it's only going to get worse from here, so I hope you subscribe. Enjoy watching me suffer through all of this for the rest of the year. I love to get feedback on the video and the presentation of it, get some tips and keine Ahnung. And I hope to see you at the end of April for the next video on world building. Until then, bye bye!